listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Happy Hump Day, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. Welcome to the show. This is the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over to Odyssey Radio. See all the goodness that's Odyssey and all the different things you can find over there, the different shows you can listen to, and at the same time, find some of the other places where you can hear this show in its audio format archived. Now, places like Spreaker and iTunes and iHeartRadio, places like that. At the same time tonight that you're listening to this, you could come on over to the YouTube channel and watch the video simulcast. And that's over at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Mr. all spelled out. And come on over and see that and join the live chat room, which is starting up right now as this show is beginning, inhabited by all the Intrepids that are over there. And while you're there, why don't you subscribe to my channel and hit the little join button. That button will allow you to become a member, and it shows you 3 different levels of membership to join my YouTube page. So take a look at that, see the perks that you get for this show, and join us over there. Become a member. So good to have you here tonight. It's Wednesday, and it's the middle of the week, and over here it's kind of funny. I live up in the great white north of Minnesota to Wisconsin. I've always claimed Minnesota because I grew up there and lived there most of my entire life, save for maybe a handful of years in other places. Like I lived in Lynchburg, Virginia for a couple of years, way back at the beginning of my career in the early 80s, and I lived in Detroit about 10 years after that for about 2.5, 3 years. And other than that, I've always been a Minnesota boy. And then we brought property across the river in Wisconsin, which is really an extended part of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So up here in the Great White North, which I claim, Minnesota, western Wisconsin, it's supposed to be really cold this time of year. Average temps, 20s to low 30s in there, and then down into the teens at night. Well, it's been cold over the last few days, and it's been a warmer fall to winter, and pretty quick here in a couple of days, we've got the first day of winter coming, and it's going to be in the 40s over the weekend, which is nice as far as I'm concerned. Hold off that snow and ice. Now, they say you got to have the snow and ice up here over the winter because when that melts, it all soaks into the ground. The snow and ice also keeps the water that's in the ground retained in the ground so you don't have drought in the spring and summer. And so I get it, I understand it, but I'm so tired of snow and ice. I think I'm going to be moving south one of these days. So it's been pretty nice up here. It's been a nice kind of sunny day today, which is good. And today, I want to kick off with our Spark Courage. I want to talk about that. And there's a bunch of stuff I'd like to talk about, and we'll see what all we get to. And then we're going to get back into our little series, probably not until the second segment of the show, get into the sacred language, the holy language, if you will. Is there a primordial prototype? That's the word I'm looking for. A prototype language. A language that was given us by the divine. So we're going to look at primordial language tonight. But before we do, let's get into our Spark Courage. Again, this is just a store-bought thing. Well, I got it at a garage sale. You could probably find this stuff. Spark Courage, 50 Ways to Be Bold. We've been doing this all, just about every day. And it's got the faux matchsticks in there, as you can see. And those faux matchsticks each has a message on it. For us to find ways to be courageous and bold. Do you think that these are times right now where we should find our boldness, find our courageousness? Do you know that there are some people who, it's like today in Minnesota, just right across the border, and I do a lot of business over there, and a lot of my friends live over there, and Governor Walz of Minnesota, very leftist, very liberal, he has put down the mandates in Minnesota about wearing masks everywhere. He shut down restaurants and bars and places like that. Like my wife's own work, her independent massage therapy is done through a hotel in Stillwater, Minnesota. But everything's shut down. Now the hotel is open, but nobody's going to stay. There's no place to go eat. There's nothing to do. And so the town is virtually a ghost town compared to what it was. And so Walls came out, I think it was yesterday, and emphasized that he's going to hold this line through the end of, at least the end of the holidays and the end of the year. And you've got a big coalition of restaurants that is now rising up in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, probably outstate a bit too. There was at least 100 of them, restaurants and bars, that are raising up a coalition that says, screw you, Walls, we are not gonna abide by the mandate. We need to be open for our families to survive. And you know, with COVID, did you happen to know that COVID, that where they can trace the origins of COVID, where it's been there are infections, they can trace them back to places where they've begun. And about restaurants and bars represent less than 2% of the origin of infection rate. So people don't get infected at restaurants and bars. They get infected in other places. But restaurants and bar owners are suffering the most right now. So I stand with these guys in this coalition. And I'll tell you more about that as I learn more about that. But for now, let's go into our boldness and our courageousness. And I want to tip my hat to the courageousness and boldness of this coalition that's telling Governor Walz to go take a hike, because they need to be open. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Spread some courage to another person by giving a heartfelt compliment. That's what that says. Spread courage to another person by giving a heartfelt compliment. What do you think? What is it about complimenting somebody that can spread courage to them? Is it the things we choose to compliment them about? I mean, you can look at somebody and say, hey, nice hat, nice shade of lipstick, great shoes, hey, good presentation, hey, I love your smile today, nice hair, hey, that is a great pair of jeans. You know, whatever it might be. Hey, nice Santa sweater. You know, if you actually see people and you aren't mandated for social distancing. So here is the big question. How can you spread courageousness or give courage to somebody else by complimenting them? A heartfelt compliment, it says here. So if you have a heartfelt compliment you're giving to somebody, you know what you just might do? You just might be giving that person that boost they needed for the day. That thing that they needed to help them overcome maybe some of their own insecurities. Now, insecurities, we've all got them to a certain extent. Do you have insecurities? What are your insecurities? Hey, you guys over in the chat room, start typing in. What are some of your insecurities? Maybe you don't want anybody to know that, but you've got pseudo-anonymity in the chat room. A lot of people know each other over there. We know who you are through social media and so on. But go ahead and feel free if you want. Say, this is the thing that is my insecurity. My biggest insecurity is my big feet. My big schnoz. Hey, you! Nice nose. Do you remember? That reminds me of, you remember the Mel Brooks movie, Young Frankenstein? A classic comedy from the late 1970s. Gene Wilder and Joe, I want to say Boyle, played the Frankenstein's monster. And Terry Garr was in that. She made her debut in a Star Trek episode. If you remember the Star Trek episode with Gary Seven, Assignment Earth, where Kirk and Spock had to go back to the 1960s, and Gary Seven was kind of an enigma. He was a spy of some sort, but he was an intergalactic spy. And Terry Garr was his young kind of hippie assistant, the little blonde girl. Well, she was in Young Frankenstein. And in Young Frankenstein, building courage. Do you remember the monsters going nuts? And finally, Gene Wilder's character, Dr. Frankenstein, he looks at the monster and goes, "Hey! Hey, you! Good looking!" And the monster's like, "Oh!" And he starts complimenting him. And it's a comic scene, but go look that up. And he goes in and he starts stroking his hair and patting him. "Oh, nobody loves you, but I love you. Daddy loves you. You're such a great little boy." And the monster's like, "Ah!" And he starts crying. He's doing away with his insecurities. Now, that's a very comic scene, but have you ever done that for somebody? I do that, and I use that almost comic edge with my own kids sometimes. You know, my little girl, she doesn't want to get up, she doesn't want to get to school. I'm like, "Hey! Hey, beautiful! What are you doing?" And she'll screech and moan about something, and I'm like, and I'll try to do something funny with her to get her and build her up for the day. "Hey, get up! Hey, what beautiful hair you have! I love that purple you put in your hair. It's great. Come on, let's get dressed. Let's go to school." And same for my son. Doesn't work as much on my son. But you get the idea. How can you instill boldness? How can you instill courage in somebody else? By complimenting them. It's by building them up. Making their day. I've mentioned a few times before the fish philosophy that we had in business. Getting rid of toxic atmospheres in the office or at work. And one of the 5 things, it was her 4 things, I think it was, or 5, was make somebody's day. How do you make your life work better? How do you build your own boldness, your own courage? It's by stepping out of yourself and saying to somebody else, "Hey, make your day. Make somebody else's day." That was one of the 5 things in that fish philosophy that said, do these things and you're going to build up your own attitude. You're going to be there. You're going to make your own attitude. You're going to have a great time at work, even if you don't like work, even if you don't like what's going on there, even if you don't like your pay, if you don't like your hours, whatever it might be. Make somebody else's day and see what that does for your day and their day. So in a sense, that building up somebody's, use your courageousness by telling somebody, complimenting them on courage. What does this say exactly? What are the exact words? Spread some courage to another person by giving a heartfelt compliment. You're spreading your courage to them. Make somebody else's day and it makes your day at the same time. Let me get a sip of coffee. So why don't you give that a try today? Look at somebody else that's around you, or by the time you're listening to this late at night, could be tomorrow. You might have to incorporate this. But make somebody's day by building them up. Give them your courage and your boldness. And you know why you're giving them your boldness, why you're giving them your courage? Because sometimes it takes courage to step up and do something, rather than just be a number. I want to ask you, are you comfortable blending into the background? Some people are. That's their calling in life. They blend into the background. They do things in the background. Or they stay quiet. That's just their life. That's what they're like. Maybe you are one of those people who doesn't like to say much. You don't like to step out. You don't like to put your face out there. It's like, I think of the Humphrey Bogart character in Casablanca. And he says to the Nazis, he says, "I stick my neck out for no one." That was his philosophy, and that's how he stayed clean, and that's how he kept his business going under the Nazis, and that's how he made no waves. Maybe you're that kind of person. Maybe you don't want to make any waves out there. Or the waves you want to make are quiet ones. That's okay too. But did you know that you can share your boldness? to be quiet and do your things even in the quiet by telling somebody, making somebody else's day, and letting them know that it's your courage, that you're bringing forth your courage to step out, put your face out there. Maybe sometimes it's putting your neck on the line, where Bogart's character said, I stick my neck out for no one. I say I stick my neck out for people too many times. Not to toot my horn, but it fits what we're talking about. I had a CEO of a company once tell me, we're talking 25 years ago, that said, you Scotty, you're a lightning rod. And I didn't know what the term meant at the time. And she said, you stick your neck out for people. You attract the electricity. You attract the lightning bolts to you in order to stand for other people. And I took that as a great compliment at the time. And now let me ask you, are you a lightning rod? Are you somebody that will take on the electricity, that will take on the lightning bolts? You're going to be the lightning rod on the top of the building that draws the electricity so it doesn't crack into the building and set the building on fire. You take that on and you ground it. And so does sharing your boldness, sharing your courage, that grounds you, and it grounds other people around you, and it grounds the people that you compliment. So go out and do that. Go out and compliment people. Go out and let them know, and share your boldness that way. Put your face out there. Put your neck out there. You don't have to be gregarious. You can go out and you can just be yourself. And let people know that, and you know what? You're going to draw people to you when you do that. And when you draw people to you, you know what that does for you? Builds your boldness. Builds your courage, while at the same time, you're building theirs. So, there it is again. Spread some courage to another person by giving a heartfelt compliment. Compliment somebody today or tomorrow morning, whenever you're going to have the opportunity to do that. I mean, don't go out of way. Don't be fake about it. Hey, that's a nice belt buckle. You know, you don't have to do that, but find genuine ways to be bold and to be courageous. And, you know, all these things we're talking about courage and boldness, all these things every day, do you notice how they all kind of latch in together? They all tie into the things together about being awake, being aware, being alive, being aware that you are aware and awake. So do these things, and it's going to build you and build the people around you, and you're going to build a good environment around you. And when we said with the fish philosophy, when it was those 5 things, be present, make your own attitude, make someone else's day, all of those things were meant to help you get your attitude where it needs to be. When my 11-year-old son is grumbling, and he grumbles every day, he is not a morning person. He could be if he really wanted to be. That's the thing. People who aren't morning people, they're morning people when they want to be. If there was something that said, hey, you run out that door right now to your cold sleep and you get dressed and in 5 minutes there's going to be $1 million waiting for you out there on the front step, you know what? Those people would get up. Now, that's an extreme, stupid example. But the idea is that the world's out there waiting for you. So you can get up and you can be bold. You can be courageous. You can make your own attitude. And I like to tell my son, now, a little bit, I try not, there's a fine line between reminding him and guilting him. And we do the same with everybody around us. I don't want to guilt my son into being a better person. I want him to feel that. I want him to understand what it means to be a better person. There is, like he's a Boy Scout, and there's times where he acts in ways that are totally, absolutely opposite what it means to be a Boy Scout and the things, their vows that they take. Not vows, they're, the saying, whatever it is, whatever you call it. It's not a vow. I don't think it's a vow, but it could be. And so I asked my son, I said, are you somebody who you say you like scouting, but you don't want to do these things that scouting tells you to do. Here, I'll show you the Boy Scout. It's an oath, I think. The Boy Scout oath. Let's see what it is here. Here it is. Goes like this. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God, my country, and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. And I asked my son when we talk about that, I said, do you feel that you are keeping yourself strong physically, mentally awake and aware, morally straight? And the Scout Law has these 12 points. I'll just breeze through them to finish up our first segment here. The 12 points are trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Now, those are the things that are in that Scout Law. And so I say to my son, when we talk about these things, I say, you're a Scout. Does this mean something to you? It was like when we were in grade school and we'd say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And we'd say that, and many times we had no idea what we were talking about. And you're goofing around through the pledges and stuff like that. Same thing with the Boy Scouts oath. I said, if you're going to be a Boy Scout, and he's trying to work to be an Eagle Scout, and he wants to be an Eagle Scout, which is as high as you can go in scouting. And I said, you know what? And by the way, there are more people who are successful in life and business that were Eagle Scouts than not. And so there's a high percentage, I should say. And so I say to Flynn, do you want to be these things? You should strive to be these things. Take this list and live that and be that. And that's what it means to be a Boy Scout. And sometimes he bristles at that because I don't want to use that to guilt him or hang it over his head, but I want him to know that you can be courageous, you can be bold, you can do all these things to show that you are in your heart. This is what you want to be. You want to be a better man. And so I will ask you all, do you want to be a better man, a better woman? So go out there and share your courage, share your boldness, build your courage and boldness by complimenting somebody else, making their day. And it's going to build you up too. Okay, we're going to get off that. We're going to move into language when we come back. The sacred language. Is there such a thing as holy language that has a divine source? Sit tight. Find out in a few minutes.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
All right, gang, thanks for sitting there and waiting through the break for the second segment of this show starting right now. Welcome, this is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. And that's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio, and hear the show in its audio format. And you can also come over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts to watch this show in its video simulcast, and more importantly, to join the live chat room going on right now. Or if you're kind of a voyeur in life, and I don't mean that so negatively, you can come in and watch the video simulcast. You don't have to talk in the chat room. You don't have to let anybody know you're there, but you can watch the chat that goes on and insert yourself where you'd like, if you'd like. So come on over, youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. While you're there at my YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the little bell to get notifications, and hit that join button, which should be down below the screen over there. And hit that join button and join and become a member. There's 3 different levels of membership and perks that you can get. You can go look them up and read them when you hit that join button. So thank you for being here, and thank you for giving me your time. And I'll give you my time, you give me your time. That's like Tom Vu, if you remember him. This is we're talking way back. We're talking in the 80s. Tom Vu was a little Vietnamese guy, and he came to America, and he worked his way up from nothing and became something, and he was selling his success videotapes that you could buy. And so he would always come online, and he says, "You buy my book, you buy my videotapes, I show you how to become successful." And he says, "Back when I first came to this country," he says, "I was busboy, and I would go in restaurant, and I would give water to rich and famous people. And I would say to them, I hand you a cup of water, you give me your knowledge. And I gain their knowledge." And so, there you go. That's what we're doing here this morning. We're trading out. I'm going to give you a cup of water, you give me your knowledge, or vice versa. So, welcome to part 2 of tonight's show, Wednesday. And we're going to talk about not just the holy language and if it exists, but the primordial language. Mankind, we act as though we were the designer and the director of language and writing, while in fact both remain the master of man. And you may begin to wonder what liberation or power or even danger there could possibly be in writing and in language. We're going to look into this right now and see. There is a mathematical language, and that's one of the great mysteries that is out there. A mathematical language of divine origin. In particular, it's a language, it's a writing, it conforms mathematically to the workings of nature, even to the workings of Scripture, if you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament. And to fully comprehend this, you can't merely be told, you have to walk your way through it. And so I'm going to walk you through some of this. Now, you may not agree with everything I have to say. This is not a show about converting to a particular religion or a spirituality or way. But I think all spiritualities fit in under this header. So here and there and everywhere around us, here, there, and everywhere. That reminds me of the Scarlet Pimpernel. Remember that old movie with Leslie Howard back in I think it was the late 30s, early 40s? He was the Scarlet Pimpernel, and he played a fop, an English fop, who fought against the French Revolution and for the Loyalists, and he had a little poem. He said, "They seek him here, they seek him there. Those Frenchies seek him everywhere. Is he in heaven, or is he in hell? That damned, elusive Pimpernel." Now, that was as the fop he would say that, to try to throw people off the fact that he was this swashbuckling, heroic, sword-fighting character, fighting for the rights of people, and the fop was his cover. But that's what it made me just think of when I read my own words. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. It's evident in all of nature that there are mathematical units of growth. And how do I have a mosquito in here in winter? We see these units of growth in all living things, such as when a river branches off into smaller streams, or the sprawling, jagged edges of a lightning bolt. These patterns of growth are well known in spirals, such as are seen in the eyes of hurricanes, tornadoes, shells. You immediately think of the Fibonacci, the shell. The human ear, the human fingerprint, DNA, the spirals and smoke rings. Pour a cup of milk into coffee, you see the spiral, or oil into water. It was once said that the entire universe is written in the language of mathematics. You know who said that? Galileo said that in 1623. So to further this understanding, all living things grow by a unit of expansion. They span out from a given point. They increase in growth. This is nature. This is the nature of the universe. And some of these mathematical units you might be familiar with, such as pi, or 3.14, or the Fibonacci sequence, which has a unit of growth seen as 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on and so on, and it just keeps going. We add the last two numbers together to get the next number. And it's interesting when we take these last two numbers, like if we work our way all the way up to 144 to 233, and we divide 144 by 233, it equals 0.068, which happens to be the golden ratio of the spiral. So inversely, now I'm not big on math, but I get concepts of mathematics. I just don't like doing it. I didn't like going to school for algebra or geometry. And those things it just went against my artistic nature. But I use all of those things without even thinking about it in the things I do, because it's part of nature. 233 divided by 144 equals 1.618. And that's the golden section numbers. 1.618 and 0.618. That's pi and pi, capital and small. And the golden ratio is a universal law. It's a mathematical expression used to explain the mechanism behind form and patterns of growth. We also have the golden string of 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and so on, which is a sequence of zeros and ones, and that are so closely related to the Fibonacci numbers and the golden section, the Fibonacci, Fibonacci. And we also see these units of growth in humans, in animals, in birds, insects, plants, the branching of veins, of nerves, microbes, the cell, a cell dividing. as well as non-living things like crystals, the hexagonal geometry of snowflakes, hexagonal, I guess you could say, the geometric, molecular, and atomic patterns that all solid metals exhibit, chemical compounds, the stock market, population growth, music, mountains, landscapes, cloud formations, the solar system, galaxies. There's even some thought by NASA scientists based on cosmic background and radiation suggesting that the universe is fixed and shaped like a I can never say this word, a dodecahedron, a geometric shape based on the integral tetrahedron and pentagonal form, which is also based on pi, the golden section. So, not only are these units of growth found in all living things in the universe that we know of, that we've discovered, living and non-living things, they're also found miniaturized, all the way down to the very core and life cycle of the atom itself, the very particles that all things are made of. Now, it's important to note that all these mathematical units of growth might be different from one another, as mathematics are going to tell us. But what's mutually special about these units of growth is that even though they may all be different, they are all closely related. And what's important to know is that they all work around the golden spiral. And so in technical terms, these mathematical units of growth increase at a rate equal to oscillating around the golden spiral. And so in other words, all of these mathematical units, even though they might be different from one another, they grow around the spiral pattern, the shape of the logarithmic spiral, which is a microcosm, a miniature copy of the spiral arms of our galaxy. Everything is spinning and moving in the spiral pattern. Solar systems make up galaxies. Galaxies fill the universe. Everything we see in space seems to be rotating. Even gas and dust clouds like nebula. Not only are they rotating around their own general axes, but around some other body as well. Our moon rotates around our planet. And actually, you found our planet rotates around the moon as well. We rotate around each other. But what happens with those two bodies rotating around? They also rotate around the sun at the core of the galaxy. And the solar system rotates and also rotates around the galaxy. Itself is moving through space, rotating around something else, as is the entire universe in general. And all caused by gravity, which is one of the most pervading forces of the universe. Quite simply put, everything is always moving in one way or another. And with all this spinning and rotating going on, one should question, rotating relative to what? There are microcosms of this everywhere, which all follow the same law. A microcosm is a small version of a larger thing. And for instance, when we look at a seashell, like a conch shell, we can see that it opens out by unit of growth as it goes outward. And it's very similar to the spiral arms of a galaxy. And we can also see the same matching pattern in, look at our fist. Look at the spiral that's created from the core on out, like that. You can see in the mathematical pattern by branches on a tree, how a branch branches out in smaller and smaller twigs, and so on. A plant's leaves also spiral around the branch as they grow by the Fibonacci sequence. And they're rotating around their own general axis. And we can also get a better idea of these mathematical units when you look at things like the Fibonacci sequence, the way a plant will unfold itself when it blooms. And for better understanding, when you connect a curve through the corners of concentric rectangles, this illustrates the Fibonacci sequence. You formed the golden spiral. And so if you graph the numbers, I suppose this would be a great time to be showing off graphs and so on, but I didn't put any in today, so I'm verbally describing this to you. If you graph the numbers of any system, you're going to find that patterns emerge. There are patterns in everything. And since we're living in a giant spiral, everything that grows within that spiral is also infused by the spiral. And it's found everywhere in nature, from the nautilus shell to the ram's horns, to the face of the sunflower, the rose of a pine cone, and even fingerprints, DNA, and the life cycle of an atom particle. And it's indeed the very configuration and binding force that holds the galaxy and the universe together, this golden spiral. So nature itself has a pattern. If you haven't noticed it, it might be just because we don't think about looking for that. Go outside, walk in a field, look at plants, look at trees, look at the grass, look at the clouds, and you're going to see that this is all the things that we can see physically and touch. You're going to see it right there. But you might be and by the way, you know what that brings to mind is that Bible verse that says something about the idea, I'll paraphrase, paraphrase, but it's if you deny God, that's fine. The very rocks and trees will cry out the existence of the divine. And so nature itself is a pattern, and it's a language of its own. But you might be astounded to find out that nature's pattern and language actually matches the pattern of ancient scriptural writing. Did you know that? This is all a finding that we're going to talk about this as we go on about language. We're going to reveal how this is done and how you can see this. And the crux of the design can be linked to a god, a divinity. Not just any god, but the God of the universe, the Originator, no less. So continuing this thought, we see that it's nature's design which works by way of revolving around the shape of the logarithmic spiral arms of our galaxy. And realizing this, you have to look to this connection to the divine, to God. If the galaxy, here, consider this, if the galaxy and the universe do not follow the will of a divine, then such a divine isn't a divine at all. In other words, to simplify that in simpler words that we use, if the universe doesn't follow the will of a God, then such a God isn't God. So it's as simple as that. Nature, as well as everything in the entire universe, would have to conform to God in these same patterns in every way. Additionally, now maybe it's a leap for you to say that all this spiraling, all of this natural, everything following the same pattern is of God. Maybe that's unnatural for you to say that. Maybe you deny that. Maybe you say, no, this is just science. This is the way science works. Well, maybe so. But was there an originator of that science? We're going to assume that for the sake of what we're talking about. Nature, as well as everything in the entire universe, would have to conform to a divine in these same patterns in every way. There would have to be something very familiar within it all. Perhaps some sort of defining and cohesive feature that would associate with everything. This would be easily discernible and blatantly obvious, kind of an Occam's razor, if you will, analogy, which means the simplest explanation for a phenomenon is more likely to be accurate than the more complicated explanations. That's Occam's razor. And so this encompasses the realization that the whole, W-H-O-L-E, is much more than just the sum of the fragmented parts. So logically, a creator, a originator, would want their creation to know who the inventor was as a testimony to the creation. And this is revealing that the creator was the maker. And since all things originated from the creator, that creator would leave some sort of an identifying and distinctive characteristic. More to the point, a convincing and undeniable trademark that would link everything back to the originator. the divine. So searching the underbelly for this multifaceted trademark, one question remains. Whose design is the spiral? And who made its program to spin? So to realize just what this deliberate design was takes considerable time and effort and a lot of thought and maybe a little bit of conjecture, but we try to stick to a mathematical or a common sense way of thinking while we're doing this. If you begin to reminisce, if there was one piece of tangible and material evidence that God has given us that could be linked back to God, what would that be? Combining both nature and the tangible, you have a hint that the answer to this question would be found in the word, the language, the logos, somewhere. If this is God's revelation in text, you have to presuppose that there's going to be a clue there. So first, in terms of nature, the biblical text is always alluding to seeing and noticing God through nature. Did you know that? Quite simply, that his very handiwork, the creation, can be found in all of nature. Romans 1 and verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, the divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse before God." Meaning it's going to be really tough to deny who God is when you look at his invisible qualities that come out in nature. And you start to understand the Creator from what has been created. Now, of course, I'm using the Bible to substantiate some of this as the Word of God. We're going to presuppose that for this little series. Now, does that mean you have to become a Christian or a Jew? No, it means that it's expressed in these scriptures, and frankly in other places as well. But you have to remember the biblical story of Moses on Mount Sinai, receiving the Ten Commandments from God. As the story goes, God asked Moses to carve out 2 stone tablets. And upon those 2 tablets, God gave Moses the new laws. And I thought that there had to be something superlatively special about these laws and the individual letters that composed the words. They were recorded in the Bible as having been written by the actual physical, if you will, finger of God. Moses carves a tablet, God writes on the tablets, according to the scripture. And Exodus 31:18 says, "When the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of testimony, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God." Is this talking about an actual physical deed, or is it a metaphoric deed? Moses wrote them out because God inspired him and he was the finger of God. Or did God's finger actually scrawl onto the tablet? Is there a divine act, a miraculous thing that goes on here? So in Exodus 32:16 it says, "The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets." And so we read this again in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 10. "The Lord gave me 2 stone tablets," said Moses, "inscribed by the finger of God. On them were all the commandments the Lord proclaimed to you on the mountain of the fire on the day of the assembly." So you soon start thinking that there must be something particularly special about this writing, the physical writing that appeared on those tablets, especially the letters coming from the personal finger of God. And you begin to reason that these letters could also have been to conform to nature and the mathematical units and laws by which all things grow. And of course, we don't have the actual tablets that God gave Moses about 3,000 years ago with the 10 Commandments scrawled on them by with God's handwriting. Imagine if you had a document, a stone tablet, and you can go, "Hey, this is God's handwriting." It's like, I got God's signature. But if that's actually the truth, if they were written on those to see what the writing looked like, we can rest assured that the Hebrew scholars, the Torah scribes, the rabbis, had copied them all down identically and perfectly as they saw them from the tablets throughout the centuries. This is what happened in the Torah with Jewish law, with Jewish tradition, rabbinic tradition. They copied this stuff down. And the Dead Sea Scrolls are proof of this. This might be why there was so much emphasis on proper writing and proper writing etiquette while writing the Torah, otherwise known as the 5 books of Moses, the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, the Jewish Pentateuch. According to the sages, the Hebrew Torah scribes had to adhere to strict observances. There were to be no alterations or deviations, and I've quoted this verse before. There were to be no alterations or deviations, and not one single letter, not one jot or tittle, as the verse says, could be omitted. And the Jewish Torah writers were instructed that if they changed a letter of the text, it would be the equivalent to the destruction of the divine universe. And so additionally, there's also this mysterious factor concerning this particular style of writing that's found in the Torah. It seems that out of nowhere, the Hebrew, the square block script, surfaced with the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. It appeared suddenly, bypassing the natural evolutionary trail, and to many scholars this is an inexplicable mystery. It goes back 3,000 years. So continuing with this idea, and by the way, when John Ward and I were at Serabit el-Khadim, the place that we thought is the holy mountain of God in the Sinai desert, been there a couple of times, and in one of the caves where there's copper and turquoise mining that took place in the mountains all around this region. And we slipped into one of those little caves and looked at where there'd been carving, and there was old Hebrew text, Paleo-Hebrew text, ancient, and it changed somewhere in there. So in that period of time, it changed over to the more block style of writing. And so it bypassed this natural evolutionary trail, the evolution of the language, of the Hebrew language, in writing. And to many scholars, this is a mystery. And so continuing with this idea, I thought that there has to be some rational logic or intelligent design to this writing and to the letters, especially if it was written by the claimed creator, the originator of all things that are in existence. Then, like a bolt of lightning, the complexity of the divine hit me on this. I thought, could it be that the way that God writes in Scripture is the same way he works and acts through nature? To verify this connection, in order to make this amazing association, you got to look up in the opening chapter of Genesis 1:1 of the Hebrew Torah, the Old Testament written in Hebrew script, where it specifically tells us that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, the heavens and the earth. I then look to this verse, the very first Hebrew letter from the first word of Genesis 1, which is a Hebrew letter B, bet, B-E-T, from the Hebrew Barashith, which reads in English, in the beginning. And this is what the actual Hebrew word looks like. And I've got it written down here in Hebrew. And I did not import it for you. But the Hebrew letter, bet, has an individual symbolic meaning, and it's attached to it, which represents tent, house, enter. It's almost as if it's an invitation to come in and dwell, expressing that herein the answer could be found. And intuitively you can look at that and you know that this is the key. You can realize from the very first letter in the Bible, in Hebrew, that it is the one thing to be visionary and yet at the same time appear credible. You take this very first Hebrew letter, the bet, and the form of it, and it spirals it bends. It's a bendable wire around with which the approximate measure of unit growth is found in nature. And we got to stop there. I'm almost going overtime. Folks, this is interesting stuff when you start breaking this down. We're going to hit this again tomorrow. I hope you've enjoyed this. And we're going to take a 23-hour break. We got to stop abruptly right there and quit. We will see you tomorrow. Hang tight.